I don't think of Elvis like that because I know too many artists that are far greater than Elvis.
Picture Ray Charles leaning into his final microphone, his voice quivering like thunder. In that moment, he left no love song, no pile of money. What he did leave was a hidden note packed with 10 names that made him grind his teeth in rage. That list was his last roar, a growl aimed straight at the stage lights that once blinded him. Ray felt these stars were masks, shining bright, but hiding the real faces of soul. Elvis Presley topped the page, a giant spotlight that sucked all the oxygen. Kenny G followed. A smooth player Ray joke sounded like lobby music for fancy hotels. 8 more stood just below, singers who covered true rhythm with sugar. Ray never spoke each one in public. Yet insiders swear the list included a pop choir queen, 2 polished boy band heartthrobs, and a Grammy magnate who built an empire on watered-down Motown. Los Angeles, a warm October afternoon in 2002. A small studio on Sunset Boulevard felt frozen in amber. Inside, Ray sat in his wooden chair, eyes closed, not to feel rhythm but to trap silence. A red camera light burned. Then a gentle question landed like a boulder. What do you think of Elvis Presley? Ray did not laugh. He did not tease. He slowly shook his head and whispered, heavy as stone, "Don't ask me no more questions about Elvis." All he did was take our music and make money from it. Elvis was already gone, yet his shadow still draped Ray and every black artist who built the roots of American sound. Crowds called Elvis the King. Ray called him a door opener who walked across floors other singers built, wearing a crown forged from nameless voices. Nobody denied Elvis could perform, not even Ray. Yet nobody with Elvis's skin could feel the pain that soaked Ray's songs in the 1950s. Ray sang gospel in small churches and hammered rhythm and blues in clubs split by race. Radio stations shut him out for sounding too black. Then a white kid from Tupelo strolled in with the same swing, the same twang, the same hip shake, and the world shouted that music had finally changed. He didn't steal anything, but people stole from us to put in his hands, Reese said in a rare, unaired interview. Ray never threw public stones at Elvis, yet he never forgave what Elvis stood for. He saw a system where creators waited while others with safer skin told the story. Backstage, rumors said Ray once refused to share a TV stage with Elvis. He did not want to help blur the roots. Ray's fight with Elvis was bigger than 2 men. It was the endless tug between creator and imitator, between muffled melodies and loud copies. To Ray, Elvis did not need to do wrong to sit at the top of his unforgiven list. Elvis only needed the right time, the right place, and the right skin. A harder question lingers for listeners. Is it fair to call a voice revolutionary simply because it comes from someone who looks less rebellious? Ray never spoke this next person's name. He used the phrase, "that white boy singing it back," whenever that soft, polite voice hit the airwaves. Each time Ray heard it, he snapped off the radio and stared at the silence, as if that hush shouted louder than sound. To Ray, Pat Boone was not a thief. He was an aching question about fairness. Why did the same tune become acceptable only after it washed away its black birthmark? During the 1950s, Ray played piano for rent in southern bars, while Boone appeared on television in a bright suit, smiling and singing ballads Ray knew from his neighbors. Tutti Frutti, Ain't That a Shame, Long Tall Sally. Boone did not write them, did not crawl through the hurt that birthed them, yet he delivered them in a way safe enough to float into white middle-class living rooms, where Ray was never welcome to the front door. Ray once heard Boone's version of Ain't That a Shame and laughed, not because it sounded bad, but because it felt empty. He sings like he's reading someone else's speech. Ray muttered. What stabbed Ray was not the music, but the machine. Fats Domino, who wrote the song, got blocked from airplay simply for his name and skin, while Boone rose to Icon, an event in 1983 honoring black legends. Boone walked the stage, shook hands, and smiled. When he reached Ray, there was only a cool stare. Ray lifted his sunglasses, looked past Boone, and turned away. Someone asked, "You don't like Pat Boone?" Ray answered, "I don't know him, I just know his voice used to be played instead of my friend's Ree." Ray's anger was not personal. Boone did not design the barrier, but he profited from it. Ray did not crave stolen glory. He wanted people to quit pretending to swap was fair or accidental. To stop acting like white and black music began on equal ground. Ray died in 2004. Boone still walks, and his records fill tourist shops across the southern states. Listen close, and you'll feel something missing in every track. Not because Boone sang wrong, but because he never tasted the sting of rejection the first time he opened his mouth. Pat Boone did not steal songs, but the halo above him was light borrowed from other souls he never fully honored. That boy sings like he's wearing my skin. Ray whispered at a small press event in Chicago in 1993. The target was another white soul wave rolling over the Billboard charts, Michael Bolton. Ray did not shout about Bolton. He spoke as if to himself, wounded by the sense of being replaced. That year, Bolton ruled the charts as the king of heartbreak ballads, the man credited with bringing soul back to mainstream ears. He sang with orchestras, traded lines with Pavarotti, and earned roaring applause for long, raspy high notes. Notes once branded too intense when Ray poured them into the world 3 decades earlier. The cruel twist stung. When Ray sang with that raw fire, he was labeled too black. When Bolton copied the very style, critics called it fresh air. No blades were needed for that cut. Only a different name, a different skin. Backstage at the American Music Awards, one long night changed everything for Ray Charles. He had been invited to play with new generation artists, and Michael Bolton stood only a few steps away. When the host talked about the artist inheriting Ray Charles, the camera jumped to Bolton's face first. Ray turned his head. He smiled at the room, but inside something cracked like glass. "How do you inherit a life you never lived?" he wrote in his notebook after that night. To Ray, a voice was never just sound. It was history. It was a price paid in travel miles and hunger, in doors slammed for not fitting white tastes. It was every record sliced off radio for sounding too black. It was his mother's tears when he went blind at 7, yet still learned piano by touch and faith. None of that hides in vocal tricks or shiny trophies or happy press write-ups. Michael Bolton never had to live that road. He only had to match the sound, and he matched it well. When someone asked if he felt insulted by copycats, Ray answered, "I'm not mad. He took my voice. I'm mad they gave a new name." That cut deeper than anger, because the whole system cheered the swap. No one punished Bolton. Industry doors simply slid Ray to the side, as if the music had never been his. An insider recalled Ray watching Bolton sing George on My Mind, a song welded to Ray's own story. Ray sat silent for a long stretch, then said, "He's singing the words, but he's not carrying the weight." He never apologized for that feeling. It was not jealousy. It was memory, born from fighting to get played while softer covers were praised as history. People did not use the word appropriation then. Yet Ray felt the tilt and knew it was not fair. Some embers smolder under the skin of artists who believe music is sacred. Ray carried those embers, and that is why Kenny G stung him in a quiet way. At a New York gathering in 1999, filled with jazz and soul legends, Ray was asked to say a few words. He leaned on his cane, dark glasses in place, and gave that thin stage smile. Then he dropped a line that froze every table. If Charlie Parker came back and heard the radio today, he would throw his horn in the river. A few people chuckled. Ray did not. Reporters chased him later. He told them, "Jazz isn't something to be background music for hotel dinners. Jazz is something that makes people get up from their seats and live." He never named Kenny G, yet everyone knew who he meant. Long hair, smooth horn, songs gentle enough for living rooms across the country. It was jazz pressed flat, softened, stripped a bite. To Ray, that was not bold. That was surrender. What hurt most was that almost no one noticed the slow fade. Ray told an old drummer from his New Orleans club days, "He doesn't break any rules, he just makes everything easier." That line carried real pain. A whole new crowd was growing up thinking jazz was light and safe and easy. They would never feel the midnight loneliness Miles Davis poured into a mute horn. They would not taste the wild swing Thelonious Monk crashed into crooked keys. They would not hear the rough studio takes that bled real soul. Kenny G never insulted Ray. He never spoke against him. He did not try to compete. Maybe that harmless shine is what made him a symbol of loss. Tina Marie stood right on that edge. She was called Lady T and loved by many in the black community. She had style, power, respect from Rick James and Motown, and fans who guarded the scene from outsiders. Yet Ray felt a gap. Quiet but real. In a private talk in the late 90s, he said, "She sings like she's been trained, but soul don't come from practice, it comes from pain." People called Ray harsh, even jealous. How could a man who fought bias not welcome a white woman who crossed into black music and try to honor it? Ray kept saying the issue was not skin. The issue was roots. He would sit for hours in the studio with raw vocal tracks from new singers. No band, no lights. He listened for air between lines, for a shake on the last word, for the tiny slip and beat when someone stopped trying to be perfect. Of Tina, he said, "She's at the pitch but not the scars." That line spread to the soul world like a small cut that nobody named yet everyone felt. Ray did not dislike Tina Marie as a person. He praised her effort, her nerve, her long fight to stand in soul, without being seen as a white act. Still, he could not forgive one thing. Music is not a costume you try on. It only matters when you are yourself, broken pieces and all. To Ray, Tina was a bright mirror that showed everything yet held no heat. Tina Marie passed away in 2010. May the scars she chased finally sing. He would shrug today, nothing more, because a clever copy can never replace a life lived in scars and sweat. Sometimes dislike is not a shout. It is ice water pour without warning. George Harrison delivered that chill. Ray adored George's songwriting and covered one of his famous love songs because he heard pieces of himself inside it. He slowed the piano, bent the melody, and let loneliness breathe. Crowds rose and critics swooned. Frank Sinatra even said Ray made the tune bleed. Then a reporter asked George her thoughts, and the beater replied, "I liked the bridge, that part did well, the rest didn't feel right, not enough nuance, one sentence, no need for insults, no offense intended, but to Ray Charles it sent a chill down his spine." That single line stabbed Ray harder than any headline. He closed his notebook, shelved the song forever, and never spoke of it again. To Ray, music was confession, not calculation. What hurt wasn't the mild critique, but the lofty tone. George never called, never asked why Ray bent the chords that way, never tried to feel the road that black fingers had traveled. Ray later sighed to a friend, "I've played music with people who couldn't hear, but George, he could hear everything and still didn't feel a thing." Silence, he warned, can crack belief as fast as a scream. When a journalist noticed a track missing from a later set list and asked why, Ray only smiled. "Because some people like to keep their love locked up, I don't." That ended the topic, final and cold. They crowned Justin Timberlake as Michael's heir. Yet Ray only saw a boy who could dance without knowing pain. He despised supermarket music. Shiny package, no scent, no taste, no soul. From dusty bars in rural Georgia, Ray had watched polished imposters sell fake ache. By 2002, the trick was smoother than ever. A label in turn once spun, "Cry Me a River," in a Los Angeles studio, begging for Ray's blessing. Ray kept tempo with one foot, then shut it off. "It's not bad," he said, "but it's not alive either." The intern laughed, but Ray pressed on. "Do you see any blood there? Do you hear cigarette smoke in his voice? Do you see a broken heart anywhere?" No answer came. Ray later explained that real music happens when the world stops listening and the singer keeps going. He admitted Justin's pitch was perfect, the tone sleek. Yet perfection felt like mock vanilla, pretty yet hollow. Marketing made the illusion, not midnight sweat in the studio. In a quick Chicago radio chat, Ray sighed, "I see a lot of lights, little illumination." Painfully, he watched an older breed fade, not from lack of skill, but from raw honesty that trends could not digest. Justin never clapped back, maybe never heard, but Ray's verdict stood. Not wrong, just not real. Ray first witnessed Christina Aguilera on an aging television. She belted a note so high it looked ready to shatter glass. The crowd roared, cameras zoomed, and Ray exhaled, a sound caught between awe and fatigue. Later in a joint rehearsal, she beamed and asked for critique. Ray answered with a tired grin. "You got pipes, girl, but what are you really trying to say with them?" That line was a riddle. Ray measured a voice by what it risked, not by how long it held a note. After rehearsal, he muttered, She sings like she's in court trying to convince the jury she's been through hell. Christina had shared stories of family pain, yet Ray insisted Ray all heard whispers at the perfect pause. It does not scream nonstop. He feared she'd chase praise rather than truth, build her a crown for Mariah echoes and Whitney angles instead of her own bruises. Ray respected her drive, but mourned a culture that equated high notes with deep feeling. If you got to show the world you're hurting, maybe you ain't hurt enough, he grumbled. He had left an orphanage blind, with nothing but stubborn lungs, and sang as if the universe owed him an ear. Christina had every tool except a doorway for her soul, at least back then. A concert hall can feel like a dentist's waiting room when the music smells too clean. That was Ray's verdict on Barry Manilow. One dawn in Atlanta, he heard Manilow's silky voice glide from a spotless studio mix. Perfect yet strangely numb. Ray told a bandmate, it felt like plastic wrap, smooth, shiny, zero pulse. He never attacked Barry the Man. Ray attacked any sound crafted to make listeners feel absolutely nothing. As a blind boy, he learned the planet still turned by rattling an old thrift store harmonica, each sour note shouting honesty. Manilow tunes, Ray argued, were showroom creations, pretty shells hiding no wound. A hopeful producer once proposed a Ray-Manilow duet, a historic blend of icons. Ray shook his head. He ain't dirty enough for me. Dirt meant lived truth, blood on the horn, sweat on the keys, flaws that refuse disguise. In his diary, he wrote, some people sell albums, some sell truth, and some just sell polish. Manilow fit the third box, no crime, yet not worth a second spin. One wound never closed, because it came from the church that had once been Ray's fortress. As a boy in Greenville, he pressed his cheek against a wooden organ, feeling gospel vibrate like the very breath of God. In 1965, Minister Billy Graham thundered to a Southern congregation, the church is not a nightclub. Sacred music belongs to God, not the devil's playground. No name was needed. Newspapers linked the rebuke to Ray's fusion of gospel and rhythm. Ray did not storm microphones. He sat alone for an hour, fingers resting on silent keys. Preachers claimed to voice God, yet they questioned the soul of a blind man who sang his prayers in bars because poor boys were barred from marble cathedrals. Ray later told Quincy Jones, if that man ever had to beg for supper with a piano, he'd know music ain't about genre, it's about hunger, soul hunger. In answer, Ray lays gospel into every style, country, jazz, funk, shouting that the soul ignores fences. On stage, his eyes closed deeper, not to hide blindness, but to swallow unspoken grief. He did not hate Billy Graham. He hated any barrier placed between a singer and the divine. Hate, for Ray, meant pushing back against pretense, never against flesh and bone. Names on Ray's private list were not trophies of anger. They were bruises stamped by history. Each side backstage marked a moment when squeaky clean notes buried stories carved by black hands. No one truly defeated Ray Charles. They did remind him that slick copies can drown out decades of injustice. Maybe Ray never hated anyone at all. He simply refused to forgive a world too eager to forget. If you feel his fight still echoes today, like this story, drop a thought below and hit subscribe so the next truth does not fade in silence. True music keeps breathing even when the lights dim.